There are moments in life that change everything. And there are moments you don't see coming or moments you don't feel prepared for. What if you were? What if God had been preparing you all along? Through every mistake, every detour, every moment you thought you wasted. Today's video is personal. It's the story of where I was on September 11th, 2001. It's what I experienced and how in the middle of that tragedy, I began to understand something I'd never seen before. That God doesn't just call us, He prepares us. So this is a narration adapted from a story in my book, The 434 Effect, Modern Strategy for Effective Servant Leadership, and I really hope you like it. In 2001, a time before smartphones, flat screen TVs, even Netflix, I found myself at a crossroads. And at the time, I was a 24-year-old, two-time college dropout, and I was working every night, every weekend, every holiday at a job I hated with little to show for it. And the truth is, my life was actually stagnant. It was going nowhere. I had no long-term plans or prospects for my future. And to be honest, it felt as if I had just pushed the pause button on my life and didn't know how to unpause it. I wanted to find my niche in life, but every night I went home to my empty apartment feeling overwhelmed, unfulfilled, and undeniably lost. And I used to ask myself questions like, how could I have strayed so far from a path that I set out upon just a few years ago? And how will I ever find my way back? And on the surface, I'm sure I appear to be happy and confident, but on the inside, I was alone, empty, drowning in failure and regret. I knew something was missing in my life, but I didn't know what it was or how I was going to find it. So in August of 2001, as a last-ditch effort, I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force. Eventually, while I was in basic training, word spread about my faith and my earlier attempt at a degree and career in Christian ministry. So it really came as no surprise when my nickname became Rev among the other trainees. I was designated the unofficial group chaplain. And I went to basic training in late August of 2001, and I celebrated my 25th birthday a week later on September 4th, but that's not why I remember basic training so vividly. No, it's because 1 week later on September 11th, the towers in New York City fell, and two planes went down, one into the Pentagon, and one into a field outside Shanksville, Pennsylvania. In the course of a day, life in America would never be the same for me or anyone else. And that morning, I was running an errand on my own, and when I was finished, I was on my way back to meet up with my squadron, and they were busy practicing their marching at an empty lot that we used across the street. And as I was approaching, I noticed the training instructor leading them my way. Now, I guess to be more specific, leading them back to the building, the squadron building. And I thought to myself that was odd, so I just quietly stood there waiting to meet them. When they approached, Sergeant Jackson, our training instructor, just simply looked at me as he passed and told me, "Fall in." He didn't even pause. He just kind of kept walking and glancing up at the sky. And I kind of stood there just waiting as the squadron marched by, wondering what was going on. And then when the tail came, I just took my place at the rear of the column. It was just a few minutes after 9 o'clock in the morning. The second plane had just struck the South Tower. And by this time, the entire country knew we were under attack, but my fellow trainees and I, we were oblivious to it. And we were led into a day room, where the lucky ones were told to fill the sofas lining the walls. And the rest of us were instructed to sit in rows on the floor, legs crisscrossed like school kids. Once everyone was settled, the training staff, they just shut the door and left us alone. And I don't know how much time passed, but eventually they did come back and started to tell us what was happening. I know, to me it felt like it was an hour, but I'm sure it was really only just minutes. And they just simply told us the World Trade Center in New York had been hit by two hijacked aircraft, one in each tower. And then they said the words that kind of caught us all off guard. They said America was under attack. Then they just closed the door and left us alone with our thoughts. And I looked around the room and I could see that there was a lot of visible shock or disbelief. And there was this weird brief pause, like some kind of eerie silence before anyone was brave enough to talk. And we began asking each other questions like, what was the World Trade Center? What do they mean aircraft crashed into the towers? Probably the one that was on everybody's mind was, couldn't it have just been an accident? Then our instructors re-entered the room a short time later, and they told us a third plane had now crashed, this one into the Pentagon. They didn't have any details, no further explanations. They just simply closed the door behind them, leaving us once more. The next time the door opened to admit the instructors, I could tell by the look on their face, things were getting worse. And they explained to us that the first tower had collapsed and yet a fourth plane had crashed. And they had a few brief moments with us, didn't really answer any questions, and then they shut the door and were gone again. And I'm not really sure how long we were all together in that day room, but I do know that eventually we were just left to ourselves in our dorm. And everyone seemed a bit numb, but like me, not everybody was 100% sure of what was going on. I mean, the question on everybody's mind was, is this some sort of training exercise? Nobody really knew. And that evening, the evening of September 11th, I found myself standing in a line of trainees at phone booths. And I thought it was odd that every one of us were instructed to call home. Every single person in basic training that day was told to call home. I wondered why they were making us do that, but as I moved closer and closer to the front of the line, well, I heard more and more bits of conversation. I saw tears being wiped from eyes, the slumped shoulders and looks of defeat as people walked away from the phone booths. And then I knew in my heart that this was why we were calling home. This was to remove any doubt as to the severity or seriousness of what was happening in the world, our world. It was not a drill or a training exercise. It was real. And it was not a distant land or third world country, but it was our land and our country, our home. And I remember that my finger shook slightly as I dialed my parents' phone number, and my dad answered, sounding both surprised and relieved to hear my voice. There wasn't any small talk. I just asked him, did it really happen? And yes, he replied, it did. I watched it all on TV this morning. And we talked a couple more minutes about things I don't remember, but then I hung up the phone and silently walked back to my dorm. That first night alone in the dark, we were just kind of laying there trying to wrap our heads around what had happened. And I remember being there in my bottom bunk, and I heard this noise. It was out of place, but it didn't take me long to realize somebody was crying. Now, there wasn't any sobbing or wailing, but it was distinct, and I realized it was coming from more than one person. And there was no moment of indecision or any time where I was wondering what I should do to help. I just quietly left my bunk and traveled from bed to bed, talking to those kids who were hurting the most. I mean, I listened as they told me about family members or friends who were working at the Pentagon or World Trade Center. And they asked me questions like, were they safe? Did they die? Did they suffer? And I didn't know the answer to those questions. I just listened to them. I let them talk. I gave them what comfort or encouragement I could. Then I just prayed with them before moving on to the next bed. I don't know how many beds I visited that night or really how long I spent moving around. I just remember being tired. And as I walked back to my own bunk, a group of guys, they stopped me and asked me to lead the group in prayer. So there we were, me and several guys who I'd only known a couple weeks. They were on their knees, and I stood in the center, and I prayed. I prayed for strength, and I prayed for guidance. Of course, I prayed for peace. And then I realized that before that night, my life was just an amalgamation of bad choices. I like to call it a mystic whirlpool of indecision and doubt. I mean, I quit schools, I left jobs, walked away from my calling to ministry, and I quit everything, including life. I went from living to just existing. But in that moment, a light turned on in my heart. I mean, in the span of a second, or an instant, or a blink of an eye, I knew. I knew without any doubt. I knew with absolute certainty. I knew at that moment, at that time, that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And it was not an accident. It was foretold. It was planned. And for just the briefest moment, I saw a bigger picture. And all of my mistakes or bad choices that led me down this path, well, I realized that this path wasn't just a symbol of those piled up mistakes. It was actually a training ground, and I was gaining life experience, and I was learning how to live my faith through my actions. But even more so, I was learning how to communicate and how to relate to people. And I wasn't aware at the time, during what I call my epiphany on the night of September 11th, but I was using servant leadership. Now, somewhere along life's journey, I've learned to compartmentalize my emotions. I can't really tell you if it's good or bad, but I can usually put them behind a wall if necessary and retrieve them later when it's convenient. and that's what I did when my dad died in 2012. Because I didn't really grieve much during the funeral or burial process. Now, I did my grieving later, and I still do it a little each time I walk in the woods, or every time I cast a line in the water to fish, when I light a campfire, or just do things I know he enjoyed doing. And I think September 11th might have been where I picked up this trait. And I really can't say for certain, but as the nation grieved, as they watched the replays over and over, life continued on for the trainees in basic training. I mean, the tragedy of 9/11, it was spoken about, but we really didn't get to grieve with the nation. And we started hearing names like Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, but we really didn't know who they were or what they even meant. We just received bits and pieces of information as they gave it to us. And then the weeks went by, and we found ourselves graduating from basic training, and we all headed to our separate tech schools. And I said goodbye to my friends, or brothers by then, who I bonded with in prayer and encouragement. And we signed each other's basic training yearbooks, and I have many warm notes in mine, most of which start with the words, Dear Rev. Then I boarded a bus to Keesler Air Force Base, which is in Biloxi, Mississippi. And that's where I watched the replays of 9/11 for the first time. And I wrote songs and poems as a way to cope with what sentiments I had, but it just felt incomplete. The emotions that everyone else felt as they watched the events unfold, well, they were lost to me because I didn't experience that uniqueness of the moment in real time. And eventually those thoughts and feelings, they just kind of faded into the background of my mind to be, I guess, either locked behind a wall or stored away forever. And I always compare it to like a young child attending the funeral of someone that's passed away. I mean, he or she may know what happened. They may understand the loss. They might even be sad, but they will never experience that range of emotions, the loss, the hurt, the pain that their parents feel. I mean, eventually they'll be old enough to someday understand, but it's going to be too late, and too much time will have passed. And I thought my experience of September 11th would fall into that category. But years later, on the 10th anniversary of the tragedy, I came home real late in the evening. The house was quiet, and everyone was either in bed asleep or just not home at all. And I sat alone in the dark at my kitchen table. I watched the small television I hung in the corner as some now forgotten network played the original footage in real time. And I watched the smoke pour from the first tower, then the attack on the second tower. I could see the horror in the newscasters' eyes, hear the fear in their voices. And I watched the towers fall one by one. And I watched it all late into the night while I cried. You see, after a decade, the door was opened, the wall had crumbled, and I was finally able to grieve for my country. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss our content. And last but not least, drop me a line in the comments and let me know where you were on 9/11, or if you have an interesting story to tell. If you're just joining us, you can click here and begin our current series, Servant Leadership 101, or you can click here and catch another story of encouragement. This channel is designed to be a place where faith intersects with leadership and encouragement. So I'll see you in the next one.